Well, obviously, we're at 8 o'clock. Quick overview of what this new program is, and really, I think most of it's probably going to be a little bit of Q&A. This being new, although I think it's well thought out, we're learning about it too. So there's probably things that you'll come up with that improve the program. With that, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Dan. Thanks everyone for having interest in this. Like Dan said, it is new to us, and we're excited to start going through the process and learning about all the potential that can come here for Hastings. What I did really was take some of the key points that were in the application piece, and if you got an email from me, you got that information. Certainly haven't sent that to everybody, and that is available on the city's website as well. So we'll make sure it's easy to navigate. But I think just the other day I did go to the city website and type in Community Investment Fund in the search, and I was able to pull it up too. So you can certainly get that application there. You can email me directly, call me directly. We'll get you the information in that application packet. But some of the key points out of this, really a council-driven effort here. So appreciate that for sure. But for the Community Investment Fund projects, obviously seeking some vibrant community supported and public projects. In 22, there's $100,000 in funding that can be allocated. There's no max grant award, but if we get a lot of applications, there may be limited ability to fund multiple projects or too many projects. Once that $100,000 is spoken for with council approved projects, that'll be the end of it for 2022. And while matching dollars are not required, it'll help demonstrate that community support. So that's, it could be any amount. It could be a 10% match, a 20% match, a 50% match, could have 75%. So make sure that when you're filling out the application that you identify what that is. And to be eligible, it does have to be within the city limits of Hastings, and it has to be on city-owned property. Run ahead with the next slide there, Dan. These are just some examples of projects that could be eligible. Streetscapes, beautification, walkability, enhancements to parks, athletic facilities, or other public properties, trail projects, non-motorized infrastructure, public art, improving access to public amenities, tourism amenities, that could be a fairly wide range of things there. Historic preservation and commemoration. A lot of cool history here in Hastings. And studies to investigate what might be otherwise an eligible project, and maybe it's seed funding for a pilot project of some sort that'll take place year over year. Those are certainly not limited to this list, and we know there's a lot of creative people in Hastings. And hopefully some of our dialogue here after I get through with the next couple of slides will generate some more ideas, and we can help generate some ideas as well. On to the next one, Dan, please. Just quick notes. The initial deadline for projects is going to be March 31st of 2020. That is just a time frame where we're going to sit down and take the applications that we've received at that point and make sure that we review those and schedule some time to present those to Finance Committee and ultimately to City Council. But they will be reviewed on a first come, first served basis. So we'll keep that in order. All of those are coming to me. So I'll time, date, and stamp those as they get to me so I can keep myself in order. We're really encouraging to meet with city staff. So myself, potentially our city administrator, Dan, and there might be a few other folks in the city as well that we'll bring into this to go through the application, ask some additional questions. If you're unsure if a piece of property is city owned or not, or if it's inside city limits, we can answer that stuff too. Each of these applications will be reviewed by staff, the finance committee of council, and then ultimately the city council is going to have the final authorization on those. And afterwards, either way, I will be in touch with each applicant to let them know if it's awarded, if we have more questions and need clarification, or if the grant application was denied. So with that, the final slide of the night, told you we'd keep it short.
Chris, can I jump in first on a couple pieces there?
Anytime you'd like to, sir.
Clarification. The application deadline of the end of March really is just trying to level the playing field so that everybody that's on the call now, others that are interested, you have a couple of months to work and get that application together. And we'll consider everything that's come in. So it's not really first come, first serve up to that date. But after that date, if we had a bunch of great applications and we used up $90,000, whoever's coming later, they're coming at a sort of a first come, first serve. So that first deadline is just trying to level the playing field so that everybody can have the same starting point on the front end. The other piece is, obviously, as Chris pointed out, really recommend that applicants talk with city staff. If you might be looking at something that would be located in one of the parks, it's good to know what, for Parks Department to know about that, if they're already planning on replacing that piece of equipment or something, to make sure that we're working together. If you were looking at siting, I remember a couple of years ago, there was a proposal to put a flagpole in the middle of the roundabout on 2nd Street, and it would have been right on top of water mains, and we can't put that kind of structure there. So please talk to us up front just to really make sure a better project and avoid a problem. But final say is going to be recommendation from the city's finance committee and a recommendation to city council would have the final say. But just a little, my 2 cents on that, if I could. With that, I think the last slide, Chris, was just your contact information, your point person for the city on this, and can parcel questions out to the right department if it's somewhere else. They shouldn't have to figure out who to talk to. They can just talk to you as number one, and you can direct them to other people to bring in for conversation if necessary.
Yes, both good catches, Dan, on the previous slide. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I'll be the point person for the city. So start with me for sure. My contact information is listed there on this slide. It's also widely available on the city's website. So however you would like to discuss with me via phone, email, or come on down to the office and have a visit, or we can schedule a time to meet somewhere in town too. So with that, we can open it up to questions. Dan, do you want folks to use a raised hand function or just a general talk about?
I think either if somebody wants to just raise their own hand and wave, or there should be a reaction button at the bottom of your screen that does an animated hand wave. But just that way we're not talking over each other. If a couple people have questions, we can call on one at a time.
Well, there are 3 of us from Building Remembrance for Reconciliation, and that is, we set out to build a memorial or do some kind of memorial project for the early Black community and the burning of the church in 1907. And we hired Forecast. They're a public art organization that's really good. And they suggested that we do this in 3 phases, and we're in the first phase, which is and we have money for this. We're gathering information and consensus from the communities because we want the community to know and, provide, and, we want the community to be really involved. So that takes one phase. The second phase is a charrette, which means that during that time, we select an artist or we decide what we want to do. And that would be like either put a memorial, but at that point we need to know, we need to look at the land, and then we need to pick out the artist or whatever we're going to do it. And we need money for that. And then the third phase would be actually put the memorial up, which we probably wouldn't start raising money until we make these decisions. So I'm just wondering, Andy and Jackie and I, like, we have some money, but we need specific money for this charrette and for this second phase. And it will start probably at the end of this year. Does that sound like something you guys would do?
Thanks, Deb. I think the project is eligible provided that it would be completed by December 31 of 2023. So there's that timeline. And yeah, I think I guess I can't really tell you if it's something we would do or not, but that ultimately is going to be the decision of city council. But certainly that type of project is one of the examples for sure.
Yeah.
So,
But Deb, I was just going to say, I think I put the screen up there of the bullet point example. So it's real high level, but down towards 3/4 of the way down, two of them I want to point out, one being historic preservation or commemoration. Your final project absolutely fits that. And I think you could even make the point that the earlier phases or the charrette are steps towards accomplishing that.
right.
The other piece I'd point is the bullet right below that.
Yeah.
Studies to investigate otherwise eligible projects. The charrette might fit in that also. I think a couple of things I've heard out there in the past that were in my mind with that study aspect were, I know there's been some talk about doing an economic impact study at the arena, that when there's a hockey tournament here, what kind of value does that have on the impact on the community? If doing a study like that costs money so that we can make future decisions, that's an example of a study. The other prime example, is sure you're aware, is the it's after the fact, so it wouldn't work in this case, but the HPAC study a couple of years ago about how do we support arts in the community. Again, an impactful study rather than a sort of a hard, physical project. That the study might be important. So I think your charrette could fit in a couple of those categories.
Thanks. I kind of do too, because what's going to happen, I mean, this would be wonderful if the city were, actively was supported it, but we're not sure how big. I mean, it might involve like moving streets. I mean, we just don't really know, like if you look at a really successful memorial of this type, it would involve, it might, like if it was on something, we had picked out like 4th Street at Lions Park, but it's like, well, if there were 100 cars, where would they go? It's kind of that kind of stuff that we need to figure out during this second phase. Does that make sense? And like water and like what do we need bathrooms? Do we want it that big, or do we just want like a memorial that people can walk by? I don't know. I mean, that's kind of what we can't decide. I mean, we haven't been able to decide. Am I right, you guys, Jackie and Andy? Oh, Jackie?
I think it's fair to say that we are in an early phase, but I do believe that a commemorative or a memorial of some type would become either a piece of public art eventually. And I think that's the direction we're heading. And we don't yet know what that memorial or commemorative piece might be. and we're in that investigative state. But I think the 2 points you made, it could end up being a piece of public art. It certainly could be a commemoration. And I think we're in phase 1, but phase 2 is to investigate what that project is for building remembrance, and does that fit into something that the city would fund. So I think Deb has pretty much laid it out for you, or for us, to hopefully move forward with this. So yes, thank you.
Next, we've got Bruce Karnick from the Hawks.
So when you guys say, it'd be nice to have some kind of matching funds, and also along with the lines of connecting with the city, to make sure that, hey, are these things in line to be replaced? There are, between the backstop and the scoreboard, you're talking almost $100,000 with the stuff that needs to be done at Vets. Lighting is about 130 if you go with the good stuff, 70 if you go with the decent stuff. There's bullpens that can be added for about $30,000 out there. So there's a lot of things that could be done. The Hawks as an organization are sitting on about 12.5 to start kick off something. Between the most important piece from a game day standpoint, just from the atmosphere you put out there, is definitely the scoreboard. There's definitely a safety issue with the backstop, and the conversations that we've had around repairing that backstop versus replacing. Repairing, to me, really, you're talking about something that's been there since the 80s, and repairing that just doesn't change the atmosphere out there. In fact, the repairs that have been suggested make it worse, because we're talking about adding more fencing or more bars across the fencing, which then gets in people's sight lines and just makes that view worse for fans to sit in the bleachers. So Chris, maybe this is a conversation you and I need to have one-off, but is there anything slated to be done out there? So from our plans, as far as the Hawks are concerned, we can go, okay, let's focus on raising money for the scoreboard, or let's focus on raising money for the backstop. What has the city looked at investing out there, given how much the Hawks have put into that field?
Yeah, Bruce, I think, certainly a conversation with Hawks and City, and we can look at current CIP plans, adopted plans for 2023 budget submittals, those sorts of things, and really start to come up with a prioritized list of desired improvements out there, and try to make sure that this application, if the Hawks put an application is targeted at that number one priority for now.
Yeah, we definitely plan on putting an application in, especially considering that deadline is so close to the start of our season. Ideally, we don't want to be replacing the scoreboard in the middle of the season, just because I don't know what kind of access vehicles will need to get out there, as far as if they need to drive on the field or not. Clearly, if we haven't decided within the next 2 or 3 weeks what's going to happen with that backstop, that can't happen this year. Which the one we have, is working 90%, I guess, is probably the best way to say it, for protecting fans and stuff. But I still think back to the whole thing that I saw happen in front of my eyes, where a grandma was holding an infant and fall ball came through the fence, and had she not switched shoulders of where that infant was being held, that infant would not be here right now. And so when you've got things like that, safety issues that have been there for 5-6 years, it's trying to figure out what the priority is out there, as far as where the money can go. So the application process, Dan, you said that it's not going to be a first come first serve thing, as long as it's in by March date. When you're talking, if I were to come to the table with $15,000 or $20,000 and 10,000 of it needs to come from that fund for the scoreboard, that's obviously a lot more feasible than saying we need 40,000 for the backstop.
Yeah, the matching funds, they're not a requirement. They do help just stretch the dollars further. They also help, they're not the only way, but they certainly help show that there's local community support for this project. It isn't just pushing forth a great idea and asking the city to fund it, but showing that it's important enough that the organization or community is putting some dollars to it also. There's other ways to show that support, whether it be maybe some sort of survey information or feedback that you might have gotten at prior events. If it was something that a couple of organizations were jointly supporting, there's other ways to show local support besides dollars, but they definitely help show that support. And just from a practical standpoint, they help us do more project.
Okay, yeah, because I mean that obviously, like I said, the safety feature of the backstop, that scoreboard's dead. I mean, there's no repairing it at this point. It doesn't, half of it doesn't work. It needs to be repaired or replaced completely. Just, it needs to go away. It's 20+ years old and technology's changed too much. I see, are the folks willing to collaborate on project? If that's, of course, I'm always willing to collaborate on stuff out there. So if it's affects the baseball field, because that's what I help take care of. The only other question I had is this a fund that's going to be made available yearly, or is it just kind of a one-time thing? I guess, where did the funds come from? Because I didn't quite catch all of that with as busy as I've been with work.
The intent is that this be continued. The hope is that this be continued. Initially, this is tax dollars. At this point, the city council has kicked around ideas, but has not talked specifically, how do we put another $100,000 into it next year? But I think if it's successful, it's certainly something that they'll find a way to do. The other piece that I have heard mentioned is if this is successful, it might be something that others in the community would see as a good place to make donations or bequests to, and they would know that the dollars would be well used for amenity type projects, not something that the city would just use to divert to fixing potholes or some other maintenance type piece, but actually something that they would be getting a return as a community. So it's intended to be something we would continue doing, but as you point out, this is the first year we've done it. So some of it will be learned in the future.
Trial by fire. Got it. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to ask a couple questions, and I'll mute, and you guys have a good night.
Thanks. Bruce, the other piece I just put on that first year piece is we're learning also, and it's possible that some of the rules might change as we go forward. So for example, there's a requirement on the completion date, or there was a requirement on being on city property, and it's possible that going forward, feedback we get from the organizations, the community this first year, some of those requirements might change in the future, but the intent is that this be something that we continue to do for years and do all kinds of great partnerships here in town.
I have a question if I'm not interrupting anyone. The mural on the back of Hastings Family Service, was that funded in some way by city funds as well? Was that a collaboration or a joint project? And how does something like that fall into this type of funding, either joint or otherwise collaborated with a private business location?
That was done with city funds. It certainly had some partners such as Hastings Family Service for providing a wall. It had a city organized task force that did all the vetting on the project. So there was not an outside organization like HPAC or Thrive or somebody who certainly was supportive of seeing it done, but wasn't quite involved on the project itself. Strictly speaking, the requirement of being on city property, that project would not be eligible to apply for this.
Because of
This is a
its
new program. So
location.
that was done in the past. This is a new program. Because of that location, it's on not on city property, it would not be eligible. But that's an example of something that as we get our legs under us in a year or two with this, maybe we look at expanding some of those requirements to allow things like that in the future.
So there is the potential that there's a city location with a city building that could either become a mural or a statue or a backdrop for a fountain or something along that line, if we're looking at maybe a public piece of art.
Certainly could be a possibility, but that's where we need to have some dialogue on what are you proposing and where are you proposing it, and does it fit that park or that public location? Is putting a mural on that wall the right thing to do? But open the dialogue, and it looks like Wesley Deus has got a hand raised.
Hey, good evening, everyone. How you doing?
Good,
Good,
thanks. And
Wesley.
you?
Yeah, hey, Chris. Thanks for including me on the call. I really do appreciate it. So really just to see if there was any other folks that are involved with Hastings Athletics that had any other thoughts, on what their needs are. And I know that when I've spoken to Chris, he's always mentioned that collaboration is a really good thing, especially in Hastings with all our organizations. So just wanted to see if there was any other needs. I know that we have needs through HFC United. So just wanted to see whatever else. And it was nice. I think it was it Bruce? Bruce mentioned that he had items there that he needed fixing. So just trying to get a lay of the land, because I know that with our new president, Brent, in particular, he's very keen to be proactive within the community and try and do the best for Hastings Soccer Club. But if that includes everybody else too, then why not, right? Because I think collaboration is key, especially with our organizations being on the smaller side, right? And we all share our athletes, right? Everybody does 2 or 3 sports in Hastings. Everybody works together. So I think it's time that, in particular for me and our president, is that we start the communication and try and work with as many folks as we can to try and secure as much funding as we can, right? So if there is anybody else on, I'm here more to listen than anything else. I've had a great conversation with Chris. It looks like Dan is really supportive of the projects as well. So it sounds good news for Hastings. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Wesley. I think, certainly not only this process, but other processes, we can get association leaders together with city staff and, talk about needs and priorities. We kind of do that on a one-on-one basis each year with associations. Probably a really good idea to get a group of folks together and talk about future needs, current needs, future needs, and putting priority lists together.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris.
You bet. Anyone else have any questions for us or clarifications that we can potentially answer at this time?
Random question, is the bike paths along the river city or state, or?
Which river are you talking about, Jackie?
Well, the Mississippi River
Oh.
down below, the veterans, the bridge along behind the VFW, down by the pavilion. Are the trails along there city owned, or are those state trails? How does that?
They are currently city owned, the trail itself. And I'm speaking about the actual blacktop of the trail. Our intent is to transfer ownership of the actual asphalt to Dakota County. It is
Yeah.
part of their regional greenway system. We would still retain all of the land on either side of the trail and underneath of the trail and those sorts of things. But if we transfer that responsibility to the county, it allows us to focus our construction dollars on other sections of trail and give that responsibility to the county. But yes, Levy Park, which is where the Rotary Pavilion is, underneath the Highway 61 bridge. That might be a little bit of a tricky location because it's highway right of way, but further west all the way to Lock and Dam, all that is basically city property.
So potentially like the bridge plaque for the Spiral Bridge, something along that trail could potentially be a city public space for art or memorial or commemorative public art. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Sorry, just a quick question. I know that on one of your slides, it mentioned about the seeds. I mean, is there anything in at Hastings at the moment for the Prairieland restoration or anything like that? I know that I should ask because Seal is very proactive. I know about a Prairieland restoration and a no-mow and those kind of things too, Chris. So, I know those are usually minimal amounts of dollars, but I thought I'd just ask just in case,
Yeah, sure, Wesley. The restoration work, yeah, I mean, if it certainly can be vibrant and community and on public property. So if folks in either individuals or in Hastings environmental protectors like SEAL is a part of, have ideas and want to put those forward, that would be fantastic. I have sent information to representatives of Hastings environmental protectors about this. And we're doing some other stuff on the side with them as well through city funding.
Oh, great.
And grant funding with Friends of the Mississippi River. So we're doing a lot of good restoration work already.
Yeah, my wife, I'm sure that you should probably receive an email from her that she's kind of starting her own little revolution here in Apple Valley. And she's recruiting some folks just to help because we know, and again, kudos to you, Chris. It's because I saw what you guys were doing and I mentioned it to my wife that kind of sparked her intrigue, and then she communicated with SEAL. So thanks a bunch. I'm in the good books at the moment, so I like to keep it that way. So thank you very much, Hastings, for keeping me in the good books. So
you bet, Wes.
Thanks.
I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time here, but certainly want to be available if there's questions or comments. And I can give you a minute to think of another one.
I think the big thing is just you and I are going to have to sit down and go through some stuff in the next week or two just to see what's out there, what's on the docket for, for stuff that's getting fixed out there.
Yeah,
And,
for sure, Bruce.
figure that out, because like I said, I could easily drop $250,000 or more out there, and it's on stuff that's needed. And two of them are safety things, lights in the backstop.
Yeah, we can sit down here pretty soon, Bruce.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I just thought of another one. Sorry, Chris, you were just about to get out. I know. So what happens? Let's just say that you have applications in and you use 75,000. Is there a chance to roll over, or will those funds be just lost then? Is it is this a thing to really get people positive and say, hey, let's utilize these funds. If we don't use those funds, we might not get any more, that kind of thing. And I don't want to dig too deep, but you know what I mean? Just to see if I would hate to lose it, right? If it's there, then, if does it carry over? So.
Hey, if it's going to get lost, I just said I could spend it.
Wesley, the intent is to be able to spend this money by the completion date, the end of 23 for an approved project. If through the year, all we had was $75,000 worth of requests, I think council would have the ability to roll that over into next year and add that to funding for next year as well. So I'm probably pretty confident that that folks in Hastings here will come up with an adequate requests for very vibrant and meaningful projects to get through this 100,000 in the first year.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Chris.
You bet.
I have a question, Chris. The Friends of the Mississippi has a Conservation Legacy Partners Grant, which I understand requires some kind of local match. Is the city going to put up that match?
Yes, sir, we are for the Lois Lane Ponding Basin project.
Yeah.
Yeah. The city has our portion of that in the 22 budget, and FMR was successful in that CPL grant. And their CPL grant, I think, is for the next 4 or 5 years. So our intent is to continue to fund, I think it's 20% of that restoration work, that project that was put together by FMR with input from Hepburn City for the remainder of that project.
Great. Okay.
Well, I guess, folks, if there's no other questions, we can let everyone go for the evening. We'll be in touch. I think we can make this recording of this available somewhere, Dan.
Yeah, we should be able to figure that out.
Okay.
And the other obviously is to reach out to, Chris is the point person, but reach out to any of us at the city if some questions come up later or some other clarification as you're starting to pull together thoughts on your project. We want to be a resource to help see good partnerships and great projects.
Yeah, I've got the cheat sheet for everybody's phone numbers and email addresses, so we can make sure we get in touch with everybody. But yeah, start through me and we can get everyone pointed in the right direction if I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
everybody. Hope you guys have a great night. Looking forward to seeing some applications.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thanks.